today we're focusing on spirituality and justice work, how you can do um, the justice work and with the spirituality together rather than it being a separate thing. So, and what that does then and how it shapes the justice work. So I wanted to start with a meditation. Um, just get comfortable in your seats. And take a few deep breaths. In through your nose, hold it, and out through your mouth, as slow as you can. And close your eyes or leave your eyes unfocused in front of you. And just become aware of your body and how it meets whatever it is you're sitting on, the back of the chair, the back of the cushion, the feel of it on your body, the chair, the cushion, the bench, the clothes on your skin. And become aware of the energy in your body that moves downward, down your legs, through your knees, down your calves, past your ankles and your feet, until it goes off the bottom of your feet, through the floor and into the earth. And let it go as far into the earth as you can imagine, like roots that ground you in the earth. And become aware of the energy in your body that moves upward, up your spine, your arms, your shoulders, your neck, the back of your head, your face, until it moves upward into the universe above you. Until you're connected as far as you can to all that is above. And become aware of your heart center. Imagining whatever you love best in that center and feeling it grow as you imagine what you love. And let that extend horizontally until the love in your heart wraps around the earth and all beings. And just listen to these words. This is a lament. I don't know how many have died or how many died before the war flared up. There must be a way to listen to all the pain that burns in a people. Must be a way to hear all that anguish. Pain, creates deadness of heart. Distance makes all that suffering unreal. How else can great powers add bombs and missiles to an agony that's engulfing the world in fire and rage? How did we become so deaf to the death of innocent children and their mothers? How did we get to measure the value of one death against another, with one worth 1,000 of the other? Surely the heart of the world has died. Surely we have turned to stone in our veins. I sit here staring at the sky, wondering what could change the coldness in the soul that makes it possible for us to eat our food, go to work, and laugh with our families when we know that over in Gaza, a brief dream away, hundreds of thousands starve, their homes destroyed, their lives broken. There ought to be no religion that lets us be indifferent to all that suffering. Surely something's wrong with the world. Something's twisted in our humanity. I have friends who weep at the loss of their dogs, but whose ears are closed to the wailing from the flattened houses of Gaza. Complexity ought not to stop our souls from feeling, for pain, creates stones instead of human beings. There are, in truth, no distances in the spirit of humanity. Any great injustice makes the sleep of the world howl. We breathe in the destruction of lives that we don't see. In our dreams, we die with them. In our sleep, our souls grieve with them, for their deaths are ours, whoever they may be. We grow sick with the times. We become twisted with the wounds. Whether we are silent or not, we are poisoned by the massacres. No civilization can survive on the murder of a people. We are watching our demise. In our silence, peace is not ignorance or lies. We are measured by what we tolerate, the agony we ignore, keep quiet about, for our peace of mind. Silence helps those missiles. Our silence is touched with the blood of those children. And every day that we turn away and shut our hearts, below in the common earth of all humanity, the spilled blood rises and ghosts feed on our prosperity. For Gaza is not there, it's here. That war must end, it is clear. Find a way that does not mean the destruction of one people or another. History, in its wisdom, in its terror, has brought us to this place, to this impossible mathematical equation where we cannot solve the future with the past, with blood or blame or bombs or unsuitable slogans. I see a new future is possible there. I see lands fertile and tough, invaluable collaboration. I see that the desert will come alive with music. I see two peoples finding a new way. I see that this miracle is the only pragmatic path. All that hatred, that anger, can only blossom into a miracle. If vision and love can't bring us there, then let all the suffering find for us a new road. I see a shining land where two dreams surprise the world by finding a way to coexist. It would be the greatest breakthrough of our times. Who would dream it, make it real, when the bombs flower and the children weep? Who will find a way instead of taking a side? Who will find a way instead of taking a side? As sure as I sit here staring at the sky, I know that this vision of peace must come to be. It is an unavoidable destiny. And be aware of where those words landed in your body. Is there a particular place, more than one place? And what feelings are attached to them in that place in your body? And if you want to, breathe into them and let them go. Breathe into that space in your body and let the feelings go. And when you're ready, come gently back into this space. And we're going to break you into small groups where you can share what you what moved you about this poem. What did you notice? Oh, reflections on that. I will send it to you, by the way. I'll send you the poem. Um, it's by a man named Ben Aki. He's a Booker Prize winning poet here. And quite profound.
We had a little bit of discussion about the end of it where it says to notice your feelings and then let them go.
And let them
And
go, yeah.
conversation about not distancing ourselves from our feelings too much, because then that we lose the impetus to move and act. And anyway, we were just commenting on that idea.
Well,
And
but the feelings can get in the way
yeah, we
of
understood that part.
moving
Like,
and acting. So
yeah, don't get
I mean, these are pieces of what's called the welcoming prayer, where you recognize the feeling and you just drop completely into it until you feel it every inch of your body, and then you let it go. And the feeling doesn't disappear, but the space that it took up does. So it gives you more room to explore it. So but yeah, it's a good thought. Yes.
We understood, like, don't get stuck in it is part of the message.
Yeah, that's what it is. Don't get stuck in it. Yeah.
Yeah, to the point where it's in action, you just can't act. But I noticed myself is like, okay, I did let feelings go. But there was this residual, like, wow, that was powerful.
Mm-hmm.
It was still there, But good point, good question. Thank you.
Well, and it's the process. If you let it go, you see what's underneath it. So there's a whole way of kind of peeling things away to get to the core of it. The other thing is that if you use this kind of reading in a congregational setting, often it'll evoke feelings and tears. Essentially, people will get upset, and somehow you need to give pre-instructions that say, if someone gets upset, let them just sit with it. You know, hand them Kleenex, but don't go over to them and put your arms around them, because that what happens is that means then suddenly they begin to feel like they have to take care of you instead of just experiencing what they're experiencing. And the point is to be able to hold them wherever they are at that space. It's not uncaring to let people just sit there and be part of a group with the tears running down their face. And it's a hard thing to learn because our instinct is to want to fix it rather than to just sit with it. Because they're crying for all of us.
One line
Ellie,
that we talked about is, as someone whose golden retriever died at age 5, the line about the person grieving their pet and not indifference to Gaza was one that I'm going, oh, that's not true, because I'm in deep sorrow over my dog, but I'm in deep anguish over Gaza. And so the writer was probably making a generalization that doesn't fit everybody. Not probably, she did make a
could be, yeah.
generalization.
Yeah, I mean, I have to look at those words again. And we can more than one thing in terms of
Different layers completely.
yeah, different layers. But I think what he's putting, I have friends who weep at the loss of their dogs, but their ears are closed to the wailing from the flattened houses in Gaza. So it's not that you shouldn't weep for your dog, it's that, you know, don't close your ears to what's happening in
Which
Gaza.
many of us don't do. We're there, both players.
Yeah, we have it. Yeah, we pay attention to all of it. But I mean, that was the one that starts with the one about religion. There ought to be no religion that lets us be indifferent to all that suffering. So I think that's what he's pointed as the indifference. Anyway, this is a classic lament structure, and Phil pointed out earlier he didn't mention God once. So, and the lament, and I'll share my screen. I'll just show you what it is, and we'll send this to you. What got shared? Do you see the lament? Some of the lament? Yes, I guess you do. All right.
Yeah, can you expand that screen maybe? Can you
expand it, make it bigger?
Yeah, and biggen it, as we say.
That's it. Does that
There we go. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
How do you call on the divine presence? He's calling on us. That's the divine presence. Complaint. What is your lament or your cry of pain? Your affirmation of trust. And they're talking about God here. You could put, because I pulled this from a book that she uses God language, so I didn't change her words, but you can change that to experiences of the holy meeting you in your pain before, a memory of your sense of companionship. What is your deepest desire? What do you want for the earth? What do you need to feel witnessed? What's the vow of praise? And a hymn or a blessing. Something for which you can express gratitude, wonder, delight. And I use this as an exercise before we start planning justice work to really think about what it is that breaks our hearts in our community. You know, what it is that we want to address as a community. And how do you take that broken heart and turn it into action? One of the things that I have noticed is that most of the time we're too small in our justice work. We pick particular projects and then get upset when not everybody doesn't get on board. Why not be too big, boldly? Why can't your justice work be to end the war in Gaza or end world wars and let people figure out what it is they can do toward that and bring all of that together so people can see all the little things that everybody does that move toward that. We did, and when I was in Evanston, our justice project for the year was End Hunger Now. So we did a hunger banquet. They raised money for heifer project things. The kids did a mural that ended up in the heifer project magazine, a mosaic. Adults did different kinds of things, but it was like, it's something that everybody could figure that they were contributing to, as opposed to one project that maybe you had time to put into it and maybe you didn't. But you feel that you're contributing to a bigger piece than just the small things that we do, where we'll argue over what project should we do this year, because people have different interests and different pet projects. So in terms of the wholeness of it, think of what breaks your heart in your community that you would like to bring loving energy toward. And how do you listen to the community? How do you walk with the community to see what it is they really need? I mean, often we decide to go in and fix things without really knowing what's needed. And one of the stories I remember reading about was a man in an inner city church was just looked at all the things the church did and none of it too successfully. So he just shut down all their social justice projects for the year. They just shut down the soup kitchen and shut down the food bank and had people go listen in the community and then come back and tell them what they heard. Go to various community meetings, go to various places within their community and just listen. And what happened is when they came back, they realized that the problem was not food shortage. It was hypertension, diabetes. It was the kind of food and care that people needed. So they were able then to respond to what the community needed, not to what they thought the community needed. So it's how do we listen to the people in our community? And I mean, have you walked your neighborhoods? Many of us talk about the fact that that people who live in our neighborhoods don't come to our particular church, but maybe they don't even know we're there because they haven't seen us. So it's how do you, you know, in terms of, again, justice work, how do you walk with your community and know them and know what they need and know that they can come to you when they had particular needs that you might be able to support them with. So thoughts? Questions?
I have a thought. Four of us are here from the church in Virginia, Minnesota, but I was just counting up. Folks in our congregation come from at least nine, maybe 10 small communities, each of which is a rural community on the Iron Range. And each has a unique flavor and set of needs. And we would need to build that in somehow, that what is salient in Virginia, where the church is located, is not probably what's going on in Aurora. There's community number 11. Yeah.
You know, I'll just say, you know, one thing I like to do is at least get congregations to think in terms of, well, I'm in Elkhart County right now, so just county, you know, what's heartbreaking about what's going on in our county. And sometimes that can include more, you know, communities together. And if it's not the county, it's, you know, draw a circle around it. And you may find some commonalities, or you may find some different issues that may benefit from having energy put into similar sort of actions. I'm not exactly sure how that would work, but you know, and I have had people be concerned that they're thinking too locally. And they want to have a global thing, and that's actually climate change is one of the ones that I've heard people complain about. Like, well, if we think locally, we're going to forget about climate change. So for me, the thing to do is, are there any local effects here that we need to be attentive to? You know, and you know, so I do think it takes a lot of conversation and just kind of broadening things. And so I'd just like to mention the witness part right here too.
The witness,
Yeah.
yeah.
One of the
It's
things,
walking,
yeah,
well, it's walking with people and not for them or to them.
being with
It's
them.
just being with them.
Yeah, this is I just was the article that really got Sue and I going on this back in 2011 mentioned Sam Wells, who's the vicar of St. Martin's in the Field in London, right, Sue? And
he was at Duke for years, so
yeah, and he says that with is the most important theological word, you know, and the idea is how are we with the people that we're concerned about? You know, how are we with people who are in the situation that is breaking our heart? And not doing things for them, or not doing things to them, or whatever, but being with them. And I always think that's a good place to start with social justice work, you know, because it invites you to find out what really, you know, what people really need in order to feel valued and supported, and that somebody is indeed with them. And Sue, I just noticed they have a whole new course. I don't know if you saw that, but they developed a whole new course around this. So
no, I didn't.
yeah, so he's really been working this for a while, you know, for decades, you know. So that's kind of that to me that matches like so you know what I ask individuals, you know, what's heartbreaking up, what breaks your heart that's going on in our community, and it could be the whole county or the region or whatever, and you get lots of different things. And you can start to find, you know, well, this seems to be where the energy is for a majority of people. And then the question becomes, how can we be with, you know, the folks who are affected by this injustice or whatever it is that breaks our heart. Anyway, Jacqueline.
Yeah, I think that we have been talking about this in our congregation for a while. It's actually the notion that comes from the groups we're looking to serve, which is nothing about us without us, which is as simple as, it's like, don't be making plans for us if we're not included in the making of those plans. And so we've been talking about that. What I appreciate, though, what you're offering here is this notion of listening in a different way, because we also do listening sessions through our work, our collective work with other organizations within our city. And so we do listening sessions every couple of years to find out what the community wants. What I am often troubled by, though, is that that listening, even what you just mentioned, because I've done this too, seems to always still be based from the perspective of those of us who are looking to do the thing, as opposed to what Sue is
Yeah.
talking about, of just being with people and seeing what emerges from them. Because even I did a service, I think it was like in last fall or early spring or something like that, in which I did ask everyone in the congregation during the service, what's breaking your heart right now? And they were all given index cards to talk about what's breaking their heart and just to call it out into this space. And I collected all those cards and spent some time with all of them to see what was breaking people's heart. And I got a sense of that. But what I think we probably need to do more of is what is breaking the community's heart, and then us join in with the community with what's breaking their heart. Because we can have all kinds of things breaking our hearts, but it might not be what's really breaking the community's hearts. And I think that's to what Sue was talking about initially, being with the community and finding out from their perspective as opposed to from our perspective. Because even with our IAF, and that's I can't remember the word that I'm looking for right now, but that's the collective that we're part of, the justice collective that we're part of in Durham, and many cities have a collective like this. But you know, I always feel that something's lacking even in that listening, in those listening circles, and that they still represent our perspective about what we want to listen for, as opposed to people bringing to us what they want us to give our attention to. So I think it's like threading that needle or navigating, walking that line of both. How do we do both? Because I think both are needed. Like after we hear the community, what's breaking their heart, how might we walk with them or travel with them in that heartbreak that they have, and how might we join together in that? I also love the story of the person of this notion of having a single, I was thinking not only a single justice issue for a year, but maybe bringing the other groups in by bringing in the notion of intersectionality. Like we can, if we were talking about food, how does climate change intersect with that? How does racial justice intersect with that? How does, like bringing in all the things, and no matter what it is that we're talking about, we can be talking about climate change. So how does food intersect with that? How does, any form of injustice intersect with that single thing? So it's not really the single thing. It's all of us bringing the views that we have to that single thing, because all of it's needed. And so for us having a more expansive imagination about those things, that it's not really a singular thing. It's something that we all need to address anyway.
Yeah. And I ran into where I saw this first was 20, 30 years ago in the Abbey on Iona. And their project was End Poverty Now. Wait a minute, end poverty now. And then I realized, because what they had is a bulletin board where people attached all the things that they were doing to end poverty now, that show this huge array of projects that people were engaged with. And it could be a garden, and it could be working with elders. It was just all different ways, but it kept that issue front and center for them. We have the same kind of network of community organizations here. It's called Citizens UK. But they're using Saul Alinsky's principle. So there's one-on-ones. You sit down with someone and you have coffee with them and you listen to them. But you listen to them having relinquished your agenda. So you're not listening for what you want to hear. You're truly listening to what they're saying. And then you bring all of that back into one place and let people know what it is you heard, and begin to say, well, what are the most important issues that we heard in the community? And then you go back to the community and you say, of these issues that we heard, what are the most important? And so they come back to us and they say, well, these 5 are the most important. And this, if we ranked them, these are the top 2. And then it is, well, can we then meet with all the city and local government agencies that are working on that and ask them what they're going to do about it? Here it's immigration and housing. Those are the 2 biggies for people. And now they're working with the Oxford City Council and the Vale of Whitehorse, and they're inviting all of the people from, instead of us going to their meetings and listening, we're inviting them to our meeting and asking them to tell us what they're doing about this and what they intend to do about it in the next year. And we'll come back and meet them again and see how they've done. But to this are 10 different groups in the city of Oxford area, in the Vale of Whitehorse County area, Oxfordshire, that are part of this listening group. So it's the Chapel Society, it's the Episcopal Diocese, it's Asylum Welcome, it's a whole variety of different kinds of organizations that are part of this. And they have hired staff that are trained to come in and train people within the congregations. And in the community organizations, they come in and develop capacity to do leadership and to do this kind of work. But I'm seeing more of that go around. But it's what it is the ability to hear people that are different than we are and their needs are different, and to really know, if we're planning something in the community, who's not at the table that lives there. Who needs to be invited to that table, so that we can hear what it is that the community truly needs, what's most important. A program wanted to be able to support, a community wanted to be able to support junior college students coming from the inner city into the community college. And they figured out that one of the obstacles would be childcare. So they set up a childcare center. Well, people still didn't come. It's because this was a Hispanic community, and it's shameful for other people to take care of your children. They would be desperate to bring their child into childcare. Family takes care of your children. So it's understanding those pieces. The goodwill was there of wanting to help people get more education, but that wasn't the obstacle. The need for childcare. So that's what the listening begins to tell us, rather than people really don't want it after all. We'll decide that no, they're really just not interested in more education. So it's how we take this into our communities.
And I thank you, Jacqueline, too. I love that idea of what's breaking the community's heart, and I think that's a hard thing to kind of discern, and that's where the spiritual work comes in, and that's where we need to be practicing discernment in our lives and in our communities too. So I do think, I like asking people what is heartbreaking. Like you said, you went through and and found what the things were, and I do think they are kind of parallel things. What's heartbreaking, what's breaking the community's heart, and how do we line those up? How do we find that? And I do think discernment really is the process. I mean, you really do need to find, yes, this is a thing, and then partnerships too. I love that. That's obviously what you need to do. Then you need to look around and say, who is already doing, who is already involved in this? How can we be with them too and find out, what their needs are from us. So one thing that was, Sue and I were talking about this, that occurred to me is, like, if we have our liturgical year and we have our different themes, yet we have a single, say, humanitarian justice sort of thing that we're doing collectively throughout the year, I think those themes then can be invitations to look at it from different ways, So, I mean, where is if your theme is joy, where is the joy in doing this? Where's the joy in being with others? And if a theme might be compassion, you know, how does this nurture compassion in what we're doing? But you know, there's a way to tie the themes to the work, and just having to ask, where's the joy here? Where's the beauty in here? Where, you know, those become theological, if that language is okay with you. Those become theological questions, you know, I think, because they're kind of trying to, by asking those questions, I think you're opening yourself up to finding where the wholeness is in the entire, you know, endeavor. You know, and I guess that's my kind of code word for spirituality in some ways, you know, is how is this helping people be whole? How is this helping our religious community be whole? How is this helping our larger community be whole? So, and of course, the word whole is related to holy. So there you go.
Well, and the other part is to just be aware of it's hard for people to go into spaces that are unfamiliar to them. So it's really easy to put a soup kitchen in my church kitchen and invite people into my church kitchen to come get their meals. Much harder for me to walk into that inner city soup kitchen and help there, because the people I encounter are not like me. So it's how do we get people to deeply reflect on what comes up for them when they do things like that? You know, how do we get people to feel comfortable going into unfamiliar spaces? I mean, I don't have an answer. I've done this, you know, counted this. I used to go. There was a place in Chicago, Inspiration Cafe, that was a free meal place that had a menu that, and people could order what they wanted from the menu rather than having to take whatever was in line. And the one requirement was they be in some kind of community treatment program to get into this cafe and get a free meal. And people volunteered to serve and to cook. And I ended up being a volunteer cook once a month down there. And people constantly told me they wanted to come with me. And I constantly invited them. And not once over 2 or 3 years did someone come with me. You know, all of a sudden at the last minute, it was too hard going down in the middle of downtown Chicago early in the morning to hang around with homeless people. But it added to that, the food you had in the kitchen was anything that they donated from the various places that donated food. So whoever went in to cook had to make up the menu based on what they found in the refrigerator. So it was quite a challenge and interesting and fun, you know. So but it was hard for me to get people to go with me. You know, there was something that of encountering that other. They were perfectly okay when we did the soup kitchen in the church kitchen. A couple times a year, we shared it with the Jewish Community Center. But even there, the third graders were more comfortable than the adults. The third graders would go sit down and talk to the people, where the adults wanted to be behind the tables and serving the food. So, you know, how do we encourage people to give voice to what makes them uncomfortable and the spaces they've been in that are uncomfortable for them? I mean, what spaces have you been in that make you uncomfortable? You're muted, so if anybody wants to talk, you have to unmute yourself.
We had a dinner club, they called it, in Virginia, where they served a meal at supper time, and you could volunteer and go. And I know what you're talking about, Sue. Like people were super comfortable, like sitting back with a ladle and being behind the table, but going out and sitting with people, very few people did that. Like,
Yeah.
and
We used to put together food baskets for Thanksgiving. Just got the list of, but people wouldn't deliver them. They were afraid to deliver them, so I ended up delivering them. But I don't know how to answer this. How do you accompany people and being able to encounter differences and then come back and reflect on it? And that's where I think the listening comes in, because it's in the listening you see the common humanity that we share and the stories that you hear people tell. I mean, I will never forget this homeless African American man in Chicago telling me this story about when he was in the army in Germany, going to out into the country and being at a lake. And while he was at the lake, the stag came out and stood at the lake and looked at him, and that it was a religious experience for him. I still remember that story because of, and I wouldn't have heard it if I had been sitting at the table with him and we were talking about other things. So it's how do we encourage that kind of encounter?
I think part of it is knowing like this person is my brother, this person is my sister. I'm not different than this person. There's not an other, because you could see it even when different groups would come serve. The way they interacted with people, it was different than when they interacted with themselves behind the line. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
We've used a praxis model a lot. You have an idea in your head about the way the world works, and then you take some actions, and you come back and reflect on those actions, and that can change your understanding of the world. And couple of instances, we brought youth and adults. There was an interfaith hospitality network where the homeless shelter moved from church to church week after week. And we brought the youth to help serve the food and play with the kids. And we had music, and oh my God, we decorated Easter eggs. What a mess. But anyway, when we were all done, we sat, the youth sat in a circle and we reflected. And I think the most poignant understanding was they're just like us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
To get at your point there, Todd.
And it takes a lot of work to set these things up so that people can have that kind of experience, and we hope that it can continue. But even, we had a relationship with a mosque in Richmond. And they had been Nation of Islam, and now they're Orthodox Islam. But so it was mostly African American inner city, and Africans in part of this mosque. And the way we started a relationship with them is that the people at church wanted a class on Islam, and I wanted a practitioner, not an academic, to come in and teach it. And we found someone that had been the imam there, that actually my colleague Sherman had gone to high school with. And so Greg came and did this 4-week class. We had 40 people every Tuesday, which was unheard of, and it was a really well-received class. But then he invited us to the mosque for some kind of event dinner, and about 5 or 10 people showed up. And we invited them every year to the church Thanksgiving dinner that we did Sunday after church, and the church picnic. And someone always came, 3 or 4 people always came, but they always were left sitting by themselves. People didn't go up and introduce themselves, didn't engage with them, and it's kind of heartbreaking. But they continued to come and feel welcomed. And it was, how do we encourage people to take that step out And I mean, how do we encourage them to take that step out when new members walk into our church that haven't been there before and talk to them? So it's the same kind of that resistance to the stranger, but how do we break those barriers down so that we're feeling more welcome? We see them as our brothers and our sisters, Todd. You know, it's and like I said, I don't have answers. Those are the questions that I sit with as we try and look at how we can be more effective in the world. I mean, the way things like Gaza happen is when we other them and they're no longer human. And so how do we become aware of when we're doing that to other people in our community? Whether it's mental health or poverty or immigration. So more questions than answers, that's for sure. Dinner church. Bill, you want to talk about that?
Sure. So one of the things that has excited me over the last few years, it's something called Dinner Church, and I first learned about it from the Fresh Expressions group, Sue, which started in the UK, I believe. And basically the idea, they talk about the inherited church. That's what we have when we come to a church or we become a minister at a church, whatever. It's the way church has been done for ages, you know. And what their kind of challenge was is, how do we have a fresh expression of church? So that's how they got their name. And one of the first things they landed on was doing what they called dinner church, which was going into a community and just starting to have dinner like once a week available for people and see what kind of community gathers there. And in their model, they were ultimately trying to create a new church, using the dinner church as the basis. Well, we found a group of two UU ministers, two of them, Emily and Aisha, doing what they call dinner church. And it's a little bit different than the Fresh Expressions thing, where what they do is they consult with your community to find ways to kind of bring this kind of nurturing of both the body and the spirit into your community, and they and still using the model of like dinner church. And so Sue and I had that interview that we shared with you that you might want to take a look at. But also they do half-hour consultations for free to get you started if you do want to just kind of talk with them. But the thing that appealed to me about this with Sue is that when we think about these the liturgical year and these kind of major sort of days where we're doing a spiritual deepening service, that this idea of nurturing both the body and the spirit can be part of that sort of service. And so how can we include perhaps the nurturing the body aspect of it when we're planning these services? And that's what they've been working they've been working steadily. They actually started right around the pandemic, so they had to figure out how to do this virtually, which is a plus because you could still have a virtual component to this where people can participate in it as well. But what this did for me was the idea of a Sunday like this, or whatever day you choose to do this, where part of it is one of these expanded sort of spiritual deepening worship services, followed by a meal of some sort, and using the techniques that Aisha and Emily came up with to deepen and enrich the theme. And that's what I like so much about what they're doing.
Well, and
so yeah,
it's embodied, how we embody our
Yeah.
worship, which is another step to move us in a different direction. How do we embody it? How do we move? They include movement, they include singing, they, and it's very playful and
Yeah.
it's multi-generational.
Yeah.
And the thing that I noted in talking with them is that, and they had the same thing that I saw consistently doing lunch every Sunday after church. They get the young families and the elders.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the groups that are always present, and those are the ones we talk about having the loneliness being such an isolation being such a part of their lives, of needing a place to be in community.
Mm-hmm.
So
And
it's a way of bringing people together across generations.
yeah. Yeah. And so I got kind of fascinated the idea of like these services could be, you know, something that would be more like a Passover Seder or something like that, and that's what Nourish is doing, is they're including the nourishing the body component with the larger service. So what really struck me with this is a way to really expand this concept of having, you know, these special services throughout the year that are lifting up themes to include that kind of nourishing element as well. So I'm just thrilled that they've been doing this, because it has a lot of possibility in it. So so we didn't share that thing that they did that went with exploring Article 2. I didn't send that out, but
Yeah,
we can do that.
this time. Yeah, and a lot of their materials, or their template, has come from Soul Matters at Home. Soul Matters produces a packet to use with families at home, and that's what they used as the template for this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of reminded me when we were talking about the practices too, a couple of sessions ago. You know, this is a way to include more into what we do during these worship services, so that they engage more practices that are spiritual practices, but more than just the ones that are related more to the worship elements, but actually include the daily life sort of elements. And for me too, you know, the meal lifts up kind of the feast day kind of aspect of these, which is one way I imagine them too. You know, is they can be days of celebration and you know, connection. So I think there's just a lot of potential in thinking about, you know, not every one of these services, but you know, some of the services where you add that intentional nourishing the body element to it. You know, so I think it's just it's an interesting thing to explore. So and they've done a lot of good work around it. So check out the video if you haven't already, and see what they're saying. And then they did offer an invitation for people in this course, if they want to contact them. They're happy to consult with you to just kind of see how they might be able to help you and your communities.
Well, and they've done this hybrid. They've done it with people gathered physically in a place and people online at the same time. So, and they can do it also all online. So it's a kind of a flexible kind of tool to use, or a different way of doing a worship experience.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'll have to confess too, one of the things my family's been doing for over 19 years now, is we've been doing soup night once a month, every month, where we just invite a lot of people over and we make a couple soups, and that's all it is, you know, and people show up. And I also mentioned too, Ibu Patel, who does interfaith work, his metaphor for community is stone soup now. You know, it's a potluck. You know, America isn't a melding pot or something. It's a potluck where we all bring, you know, the things that from our cultures and our traditions, and we share them. And so that just reinforces the idea for me of just how important it is to break bread together, to have meals like this. So really just, you know, considering how we do this. And I'm in general, I'm a big potluck fan. What can I say? You know, that's one of the reasons to go to church, you know.
to eat, yes.
Good associations from my childhood, you know. So So I guess that's, we put that in there to really encourage you all to think about how to expand this. What ways can, we're already talking about, okay, we've got a standard worship service. It has all these various elements in it. How can we make some of those elements more spiritual deepening? Lectio Divina, meditative singing, more silence, thinking of the story for all ages as more of a wisdom teaching story, things like that. All those elements. Then, are there ways to include, nourishing each other, in our bodies as well? So, and I was struck by one little thing. I really love this. Has anybody heard of the Priya Parker book, The Art of Gathering? Yeah. And she has some interesting, um, uh, guidelines. But one of them is that you need some sort of, rule to encourage the community to bind, and she talked about like dinner parties, like one rule is you can't make your own drink. You have to ask somebody to make it for you. And I was thinking, like, if you were doing like a brunch church, a rule would be like you can't pour your own coffee or you can't pour your own juice. You have to ask somebody to do it for you, So it's just a little rule to get people engaged in a deeper sort of way. And I think the nourish thing kind of has that in there. They talked about, like imaginary sort of, virtually they were feeding people, over the internet, and Sue, you've done that too with the imaginary gift kind of thing.
Yep, the imaginary
Remember, do
gift,
you
yeah,
want to talk
yeah,
about that? I love that. And I could see that fitting in these kind of worship situations, but we've done that a few times.
Yeah, I mean, and I did this and I had people. First, Sherman and I demonstrated it, and it's like, "Hi, Sherman, I'm Sue. I have a gift for you," and I take out and I say, "Imaginary gift," so it can be anything, and and so it can be, oh, it's for Sherman, and this was a joke. It's a box of donuts, and he'd go, "Oh, donuts! Thank you for the donuts," and then he'd give me an imaginary gift. I have a gift for you, and and told me what it was. But so I had the congregation pair up and do that. And I thought, oh, they're never going to do this. I did it first in the first service, which is much, much smaller than the second service. And they all did it. And then so I went ahead and picked up and did it in the second service where there were 200 people there, and they all did it. And they wouldn't stop until everybody got a gift. But it had people interact with one another that normally didn't. Especially not in that way, in that playful kind of imaginary way. And they really got into it. So it's a lot of what we need to do is to give people permission. And we do that by being comfortable in it and ourselves doing it. And give them permission then to do it, to try it, to get people out of the expectation that how Sunday morning is going to unfold. Make it a little different. You don't want to make every Sunday different, but on that occasion that there are different ways you can make Sunday different for them. Make that worship experience different, make people encounter one another in a different way. And I think the combination of all these things builds up a more resilient, open community so that they can all go down to the soup kitchen together. At the Oak Ridge Church, they sold their building and they were buying another building in Tennessee, and they had stone soup once a month. They did stone soup, really geared toward the homeless population, soup and sandwiches for people to come in and be together. And they would bring winter coats in, and they bring the doctors in to give the flu shots and various other things. And they invited members of the congregation to come, and gradually that had built up so that there were a fair number of the congregation coming with them as well. So it was a really nice community. So their requirements in buying another building was that it had to be accessible to the people that used to come to Stone Soup, so that they would not lose their connection to them. And it had to have a commercial kitchen. So they took that with them, that part of their mission with them. when they built their new church, and it's continued to thrive. All during the pandemic, they did takeout meals. So now they do both. They serve a meal and they give people a takeout meal. So it's their way of meeting their community's needs in the biggest sense. It meets the community of Oak Ridge needs, the congregation, but it also meets the larger community's needs. Anyway, let's, we've got a few minutes left. Go through what we've done in this zip crash course. I said to Phil, I said, this is what we used to do in 9 days. And we kind of crunched it all into 4 sessions of really looking at your church's theological framework that then creates that liturgical year and highlights it, and you look for themes that you can or celebrations that you can do on a regular basis throughout the year, so that there are 8 points or 1 month celebration on a particular theme, and you create a resource pack for members of the congregation that have materials for deeper reflection for them, whether it's questions, readings, spiritual exercises. Start small, it'll gradually expand because so many people will have suggestions and more people will come in. It's also something that their particular kind of volunteers love to get on the internet and find resources. So what you need them to do that, and then the editor on the other side that edits them to put them into a packet. And then using that packet, convene a small group to do some deeper reflection in that group on the particular theme and the qualities in the theme. And do it online, do it after church, do it in an evening, whatever works for your community. And then finally, look for ways to bring this opening that this spiritual deepening gives us into other aspects of church, into the justice work, into your finance committee. Do they know that a budget is a moral document? So to various parts. So if every member in the church has access to that packet, they can be encouraged to use parts of it in any kind of gathering that they have, whether it's a committee meeting, so they do a chalice lighting, or if it's a small group, they can use it in that.
And use these themes for periodic worship services that are intergenerational, that take the elements and expand them so they can be those spiritual deepening elements. And as we were just talking about today, then perhaps have some sort of meal component attached to it. So they really are big deals for your congregation over the course of the year. So that, you're either moving towards one of these, or you're enjoying the fruits of it later by, with the small groups, or however you're continuing to explore that theme. And just make it a recurring experience to have these sort of things throughout the year. And as Sue was saying, they reflect your congregation's, we'll just say theology, but whatever is the core of your congregation's beliefs, what's kind of holding your congregation together, whether it's humanist or theist or whatever. But it truly reflects who you are. These themes are presented in a way that they truly reflect who you are as a religious community.
And the larger themes get repeated then year after year, so that you have this seasonal flow. So that someone who attends for 2 or 3 years can go, oh yeah, this is what's coming up. We're going to be exploring this in depth. Oh, we've got another kitty in here.
More kitties, yeah. Cats keep showing up.
So it's a way of deepening the congregational life, because the repetition is helpful. I mean, the repetition, they don't need something new every week. The repetition so they can go back and revisit. It's looking at things as a spiral. We always revisit them, but we're in a different place. So it can bring us to new realizations.
Mhm. So Sue and I, especially me, most of us here are from the Mid-America region. So, I'm here to, in my capacity as a staff person, to help you find resources or connect with whoever it is that's working with your congregation. And if you have questions about what we've covered here, I'm happy to consult with you. But so is Sue, aren't you, Sue?
Yes, I am too. Yes, yes.
So
I'm working with small congregations.
yeah. So we're
Lots of
available,
them.
as you try things out or if you have questions about things.
And we'd love to hear what you've tried out and how it's gone. Just
Mhm.
if you've done something that's really exciting, let us know so we could let other people know.
Mhm. So I'll be sending an email out on probably Tuesday or Wednesday at the latest with this recording and some of the resources we talked about, and also an invitation to stay in touch with us. And, we are happy to further the conversation about this.
So I have a closing reading. It's called A Fortunate Day by Richard Weirman. On a fortunate day, when night and day meet, and some silence passes between them with no enmity, no battle, as the green field climbs, grasses rising gold at the edge of the sun, the path appears before you, well laid and inviting. You're sure it wasn't here before, though something in you knows it always was, always will be. The strength in your legs returns to you. Your body straightens, your nose sniffs the air. There is nothing beyond you. You kneel and empty your pockets, your bag. There's no need for these keys or this wallet. The fear that has worn you out, what use is it now? The old photos. You can feel something tear, just a bit like a leaf leaving its tree. There you see. Maybe somebody else can use them. But the sun is rising higher now in the warmth. And here's a long way to go, but your feet confident already know the way. So may this carry you on your journey. And thank you all.
Thank you. Yeah. So good to
And
see
thank you.
be with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.